Just as it's always been, the state of Alabama is the epicenter of college hoops this weekend.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Friday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We're your host. This is my good gentleman, Andy Patton, and I don't know why I emphasize those T's.
Hard emphasis there.
Hard emphasis on Andy Patton. And I'm Isaac Shade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch on this Friday. And we want to remind you, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out today to the everydayers who are joining us, and of course, all the great Locked On College Basketball Discord members. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Andy, we have an embarrassment of riches at our hands this weekend. Not only is first place up for grabs in the Iron Bowl on Saturday, but also in the Big 12, in the Big East, in the Mountain West Conference. Things are getting very bubbly with 1 month to go, plus 2 or 3 days till Selection Sunday. Andy, you said it before we hit record. It's hilarious to look at the games that we have no prayer of getting to in the show. That's how loaded this slate is. That said, let's get right after it. Andy, the game of the weekend, number 1 Auburn versus number 2 Alabama, 4 p.m. Eastern, Saturday on ESPN. FanDuel line is already out on this one. Alabama minus 1.5. Bring on the Iron Bowl basketball style. Andy, how this for Wild, and then I'll let you get going. The football version of the Iron Bowl has literally never been number 1 versus number 2. Never in a million years did I dream that we would actually get it first on the hardwood. But here we are, because our sport is the best sport. Andy, what do you make of this game?
Yeah, it's so fun that last week that was the big discourse around college basketball. Should Auburn stay number 1 after their loss? Alabama obviously did not lose, but Auburn's resume was fairly clearly still better, more quad 1 wins, less losses, just, everything that you would kind of point to a season-long resume was in favor of Auburn. And so often we see the AP voters kind of be more reactionary. And I think we expected that Alabama would move to number 1, although we disagreed with that. All that to say, it's nice that we only have 1 week where we even have to talk about this, because the winner of this game will be number 1 on Monday. I mean, there's absolutely no debate. You could make an argument that Auburn's resume will still be better if Alabama only beats them by like 1 or 2, and the metrics may still say that, but Alabama will move to number 1 if they beat Auburn. That will happen, and I don't think there's going to be much argument about that in this situation. 1 versus 2 is always such an epic basketball game. It's happened 45 times in college basketball history. It often happens non-conference. It's more rare to see it happen in conference play. The last time was actually almost a decade ago. Back in 2016, Kansas beat Oklahoma 3 overtimes, so no pressure for Auburn and Alabama to try to top that.
Was that Buddy Hield game? I was trying to remember.
In conference play, the last time it actually happened was 2021. Gonzaga beat UCLA by 20 in that game, as that was a very, very good Gonzaga roster with Jalen Suggs that went all the way to that national championship game. But actually, no, this was the next year. This was the year after that. Anyway, this is going to be an incredible game. The 2 top offenses in the country per Ken Palm's offensive efficiency. I think if this game had happened last year, we'd be very, very concerned about Alabama's ability to defend this Auburn team, particularly to defend Jani Broome in the front court, but they have shored up in that area significantly with Big Cliff. And I think that is going to be, he's going to be such an incredible factor in this game. How does Alabama defend Jani Broome is still a huge question. They just have more horses to be able to do it. But at the end of the day, this Auburn team, as they've proven earlier in the year, they can beat just about anybody, even without Jani Broome. That is how deep they are. That is how talented they are. That is how well coached they are. This is going to be an extremely fun game between 2 of the most electric teams in the country.
I really am curious to see the front court battle, Andy, and almost like I think we expect Cliff Omori and Janai Broom on each other. But
Mhm,
what I'm curious about is how does Grant Nelson then handle like
mhm,
Dylan Cardwell at the 4?
mhm.
That is a very interesting matchup to me.
Yeah,
So there's it's like we get the expected big time matchups, but how do we defend at other positions? What happens, when Chaney Johnson comes in? We got all of that.
yeah.
So there's just a lot of intrigue all over the floor in this thing, like gosh, I'm so very excited with it.
Freshman guard matchup,
Oh,
Phelan and
oh,
Pettiford. Like there's so much intrigue.
it's crazy.
Mhm,
And of course, Andy, like another big storyline is not just the national one versus national two, but the
mhm.
Southeastern Conference
Yeah.
one versus number one, because literally these teams are tied 10-1 in
Mhm,
the SEC. Right behind them is Florida and Texas A&M, who are both 2 games back. So even after this game, one of these two teams is going to have a 2-game lead over everyone but the other.
mhm.
And then we still, obviously, 3 weeks from Saturday, have the rematch to end the regular season in Auburn. And so, Andy, it's just like the SEC is going to continue the rest of them to fall away. And it's just these two teams have really, really, really separated themselves from everyone else.
Yeah, worth pointing out too, when looking at some of the data we pulled for these matchups historically, this is the 45th time. So there have been 44 previous matchups. Number one seed has won 20, or the number one ranking team has won 23 times. Number two has won 21 times. Not a surprise that it's very close. 1 versus 2 should be close, but there's no definitive edge here at all. Obviously, for Auburn going on the road, that's going to be a challenge. But my goodness, this is going to be an extremely fun basketball game. I don't even know what I think how Alabama defends Broom is probably the biggest key in this game. But I'm really glad you mentioned Grant Nelson, because it feels to me like Grant Nelson has a great game offensively, and Auburn struggles to figure out what to do with him. He's pulling guys away from the rim. He's able to hit outside shots. That is a huge difference maker. If Grant Nelson disappears, which we've seen him do throughout his tenure at Alabama, he plays well in big games frequently. I don't want to say he's not clutch or anything, but when he doesn't show up, that makes this Alabama team ceiling significantly lower. And I don't think they can beat Auburn without Grant Nelson having a big game. And so I think, the defense on Broom is probably the biggest factor, but to me, Nelson might be the next kind of most important element of this basketball game, mostly offensively. Obviously, he's going to have to play some of his best defense as well. Because this Auburn team is just so talented on that end of the floor. But I think, to me, it feels like one of the first things you look at in the box score, if you're not able to watch this game, is Grant Nelson, and it'll probably give you a good indication of how this game might have gone for the Crimson Tide.
Ooh, Andy, it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. Look, we have multiple other ranked matchups. We're going to talk about just 2 of them here because we're going to save a couple of them for the next segment. But in the Big Ten, we've also got number 16, Wisconsin, at number 7, Purdue. Remember, the Boilermakers coming off a loss earlier in the week. Michigan is alone atop the Big Ten standings right now. That game will be, Andy, good grief. We didn't make predictions on the Iron Bowl. FanDuel's got it Bama -1.5. Who are you going with, dude?
I'm going to take Auburn. It's going to be a close game, but I'm going to take them by like 4 or 5. I think they win on the road. I think they cement themselves as the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, I'm with that as well. I'm going to go closer. Give me 2 points.
I like it.
Man, okay, all right. Number 16, Wisconsin, at number 7, Purdue, 1 p.m. Eastern, Saturday on CBS. KenPom has it Purdue -4. Number 22, Mississippi State, at number 19, Ole Miss, 6 p.m. Eastern, ESPN2. KenPom has it Rebs -6. Andy, how funny that it's kind of rivalry weekend in the South. In Alabama, we got the SEC Bama school squaring off, and right next door to the West, we got the Magnolia State square off as well. Who do you like in this Big Ten matchup and this other SEC matchup?
Yeah, I think the home teams win here. They're the higher ranked teams. They're the favored teams at KenPom. I think they're going to both be awfully close basketball games. I think Chris Beard and Ole Miss will find a way to get the W here. Mississippi State has been a little bit inconsistent. It's hard to be consistent in the SEC, but they're obviously a fantastic team. But give me the Rebs in that one. Give me Purdue. I'm intrigued by this matchup. I think the guard play for both teams is fantastic. Certainly Braden Smith is arguably the best guard in college basketball. I'm not sure if it's how debatable it truly is at this point. The clear 3rd best player behind Broom and Flagg. But Wisconsin's got great great guards. John Tonji's been playing phenomenal. Blackwell's been playing really well. I like that a lot, but I think that Purdue also has the advantage in the front court. Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think, is going to do work against Wisconsin's bigs, and I think that's enough for Purdue to get the W there. So give me Purdue and Ole Miss to win those two games. Give me both of them being like 5-point games, which I know is pretty much exactly what Ken Pom has on them. But I think there's going to be close games. I think the home team's going to win out.
Yeah, when Purdue lost to Michigan earlier this week, TKR just wasn't, quite frankly, big enough for the Danny Wolf and the Vlad Golden of it all. But I think he should be plenty fine against Wisconsin. Give me Purdue at home in that one. Andy, let's remember this Magnolia matchup went to overtime in Starkville a couple weeks ago with Ole Miss winning. No, excuse me, Mississippi State winning by 3 in overtime. So we'll see if the Rebs can get some revenge here at home. Should be really interesting. And Andy, one other we want to mention here. This is not technically a ranked on ranked, but it essentially is, were it not for what's the kissing disease? I can't think of it right now. Mono, right? If mono hadn't ravaged Illinois, they'd still be ranked right now in my humble estimation. So number 11, Michigan State at others receiving votes, Illinois, 8 p.m. Eastern Saturday on Fox. Ken Pom has it, the homestanding Illini -4. Andy, let's remember, Michigan State just lost at home in the Breslin Center to Indiana. Indiana. We'll get to the Hoosiers here in a little bit. What happens here, Andy? I can't seem to make heads or I could make an easy argument either way.
Yeah, I'm taking Michigan State. I think they're a little pissed off about that loss to Indiana. I think they're going to go into Illinois. I think they're going to win. Illinois is a young team. We've seen Illinois hit a little bit of a freshman wall. KJ's been a little bit rough at times. Will Riley's been better as of late. Ivasic obviously coming off the injury and mono for him. So I think Michigan State is going to take this one. I think that Izzo's not going to let them lose even on the road in a tough environment against a tough team. Like you said, a team that's very close to being in that top 25, but give me the Spartans.
I like it. Give me the homestanding Illini. I like it. We're going to go freshman power. Give me a little Yakachonis for the win. All right, Andy, take us on.
Yeah, so first place, not only up for grabs in the SEC in the epic Iron Bowl battle, but we also got first place on the line in the Big 12. We got it on the line in the Big East. We got it on the line in the Mountain West as well. It is a loaded weekend. We're going to get to all of that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every single week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or even keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress straight out of meal planning. You can check out their Protein Plus meals. They are packed with flavor and keep you full all throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, folks, coming back in, still talking so much epic action going on this weekend. We spent a lot of time on the Iron Bowl because that is one of the best games we're going to see in the entire season, if not the best season. 1 versus 2 doesn't happen all that often. As we said, last matchup was 2021. Last time it was in a conference game was 2016. But we got first place on the line in 4 of the top 6 conferences in America this weekend. It is a fantastic, fantastic weekend of college basketball. Let's start in the Big 12, Isaac, where we got another ranked on ranked matchup, 2 top 15 teams. Houston, the Cougars, number 6, Kelvin Sampson's club, going out to Tucson to take on Arizona. Tommy Lloyd and the Wildcats at 13. This game is at 2 p.m. on Saturday on ESPN. FanDuel favoring the Cougs by 3. This is the only regular season meeting between these two teams. It is massive for a tie-breaking standpoint between these two clubs in terms of getting into the end of the regular season, what that might look like. This is going to be a really, really fun game. You got a high-octane offense for Arizona that's really coming to their own after struggling early in the season with a fairly new-look roster. You got a Houston team that is just so consistent, so tough, so physical, so defensive-focused. This is we talked about Auburn and Alabama. They're not exactly the same teams, obviously, but both number 1 and number 2 in offensive efficiency. There's a lot of similarities. These two teams play very different styles of basketball, and I think that's going to make a very, very fun game on Saturday afternoon in Tucson.
Yeah, and obviously for Houston, their lone loss is still that game where J.J. Toppin was inexplicably ejected, and then the refs weren't man enough to let Grant McCaslin yell at them for their screw up. Whatever, it's like if you screw up, don't double down by ejecting. Anyway, I'm still irked by that, but Houston has not lost since then, and they shouldn't have because they've played Oklahoma State, Colorado, and Baylor. As for Arizona, let's remember, they just lost in Manhattan at Kansas State earlier this week, who suddenly playing themselves onto the bubble. We'll get there in a little bit. Outside of that, Arizona's lone loss is also to Texas Tech. Andy, we talked about that earlier in the week. Both of these teams, prior to that Kansas State game, had only lost one Big 12 game, and both were to Texas Tech. For Arizona, I think they should win this game, even though Ken Palm favors them by 3, as you were saying. But to me, it's all going to boil down to the CLE, the Caleb Love experience. If we get good Caleb Love, I think that's enough to put Arizona over the top. But if we get the same version of Caleb Love that we had in that Kansas State game, where he goes 0 of 7 from 3, 3 of 8 from the field, 3 of 15 from the field, that's not going to do it, Andy Patton. So that's honestly, to me, that's just the key marker. You were talking about looking at Grant Nelson in the Iron Bowl. I'm looking at Caleb Love, and that's the difference in this game. Can the Houston defense do what they do and cause just an ineffective game for him? Even if it's like, yeah, you got 15 points, but it took you 20 shots to get there.
Before we move to Creighton at St. John's, which I'm very excited about as well, I'm curious. I'm looking. I don't see, as we're recording this live on Friday morning, an update on Trey Townsend, who missed the Kansas State game with a concussion. If he's not playing for Arizona, that's a huge loss for them. Toby Awaka will have to step up. Vasir will have to step up. He's been playing some great ball. But against Houston's bigs, it's always been such a funny conversation because they're not very big. They don't have a lot of guys over 6'9", but they are phenomenally physical, great rebounding team. If you don't have Townsend in the mix, I think that really hurts Arizona's chances. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on before we get to that game on Saturday. But Isaac,
he was also out in the Texas Tech game that they won. So they're 1-1 without him, but agreed. Like, I think he is so critical to them, especially against Houston. I think that's what makes the difference. Keep going.
Yeah. I was just going to say, next game we got Sunday. So we got a great battle for first place in the SEC on Saturday, a big battle for first place in the Big 12 on Saturday, and then we got a battle for first place in the Big East on Sunday. Number 24 Creighton, Greg McDermott going at Rick Pitino and the Johnnies, the number 9 ranked Red Storm. That game is at 3 p.m. on Sunday on FS1. FanDuel favoring the Johnnies by 6. What a great Sunday afternoon game. Like, how fun do we get this game on Sunday? Last week, we got very few games on Sunday because of the Super Bowl. This week, we get an epic top 25 battle for first place in one of the best college basketball conferences. That is a great gift for us college basketball junkies. Both teams coming off losses that ended very long winning streaks. Creighton had won 9 in a row. St. John's had won 10 in a row. Big East is tough. The fact that these two teams have been on those kind of winning streaks is very, very impressive. This is going to be a really fun game. I'm looking forward to the front court battle between Ryan Kalkbrenner and Zubi Ejiofor. I feel like I've been somebody who's been kind of banging the drum for Zubi Ejiofor to get more attention throughout the year. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's good on both ends of the floor. He's a great rebounder. But Ryan Kalkbrenner is Ryan Kalkbrenner. I mean, he's the likely going to be your center of the year, going to be in the All-American conversation. Certainly Janai Broom, depending on whether you consider him a center or not, I guess is your leader there. But Kalkbrenner is a phenomenal two-way player, an elite, efficient scorer around the rim. He can step out. He can do so many different things. And there's great guards in this game. Don't get me wrong. Stephen Ashford's been playing some phenomenal basketball as of late for McDermott and Creighton. But this game is going to be one on the block, and it's going to be determined heavily by how Zubi Ejiofor does on both ends of the floor while dealing with Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Andy, I've really felt like Kadary Richmond's really come into his own in recent 5-10 games for St. John's. I mentioned the other day, I really feel like he's figuring out who Rick Pitino needs him to be, and Rick Pitino's figuring out how to use Gary Best. And it's like, I don't know if he and Ashworth will end up guarding each other, but if they do, I feel like he just runs over and through and around, or not. It doesn't need to run around Stephen Ashworth, I guess I should say. And so I'm just curious how, as we do think about the backcourt, how that plays out. But then also, let's keep in mind, like unlike the SEC where they're literally tied for first place,
Mhm.
this is going to swing stuff in a massive way because St. John's win means that they have a 2-game lead over the entire conference with just 5 regular season games to go. I mean, that's almost insurmountable at that point. Meanwhile, if Creighton wins, the teams will be tied for first. Let's remember that Creighton won game 1 in Omaha, so the Blue Jays would then sweep the season series and have a leg up on the whole Big East for the 1 seed. So, Andy, that is really, really intriguing. And I love that not only are we getting this game on a Sunday afternoon, but it's in MSG. How great is that, Andy? Anything else before we move to that Mountain West game?
Just quickly, the fact that we're talking about Creighton potentially putting themselves in a position to have a clear shot at the number 1 overall seed in the Big East with 5 games to go. A month ago, we would have laughed at ourselves that we're having this conversation. This Creighton team was out of the top 25. They were like 4th in the Big East. They were behind UConn. They were behind Marquette. They were behind St. John's. I mean, honestly, Xavier was in that mix at that point. Like, this Creighton team was an afterthought in the Big East, and now they have a potential, if they win this game, to more or less solidify their spot at number 1. What a stretch of basketball it has been for Greg McDermott and the Blue Jays to do this without Pop Isaacs as well. Just extraordinary stuff from them.
Yeah, they lost on Friday, January 3rd to Marquette at Marquette by 8. They were sitting, Andy, 9-6 overall, 2-2 in Big East play.
Wow.
Since then, obviously, they just lost to the newly refreshed UConn Huskies and that 38 piece from Liam McNeely on Tuesday night, but had beaten UConn and a whole host of other teams before then. Andy, also on Sunday afternoon, good grief, the Sunday gods are finally delivering. Get out of here, football. Utah State at New Mexico. Folks, if you have not been paying attention, Utah State just continues to refresh over and over and over. Andy talked several weeks ago now about how it doesn't matter who's at the helm for Utah State. They're just getting it done. But, man, they are going to the Pit Sunday afternoon, 4 p.m. It's on CBS Sports Network. Ken Palm has it Lobos -6. And New Mexico almost took an embarrassing loss on Wednesday night at the Pit to Wyoming and Sundance Wicks. I love that. My favorite part of that entire game, Donovan Dent's floating over near their huddle, and Sundance Wicks literally pushed him back towards his own huddle. It was very good natured. It was nothing nefarious, but I just thought it was hilarious. Speaking of Donovan Dent, Andy, I think that's something to watch in this game. Is his left ankle was kind of gimpy in that game. He had, sitting on the bench. He did come back in and was playing late as New Mexico retook the game, but just something to keep an eye on in what's obviously going to be a more high-level game against Utah State. And the winner of neither of these teams are ranked right now, Andy. They're both in others receiving votes. Surely the winner of this game, who will be in first place in the Mountain West, will surely be ranked come Monday.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I think New Mexico is real hard to beat at the Pit. If New Mexico wins this game, they have a really clear path to being the number 1 overall seed in the conference. It's going to be a really fun game. Donovan Dent's health, obviously, a huge part of the conversation. Nelly Jr. Joseph playing some great basketball for them as well. For Utah State, they got 2 phenomenal guards. Ian Martinez has been great, averaging 17 a game. Like he's been fantastic. Mason Falslev has been elite as well. Really going to be fun to see how the guards play in this game. If you haven't watched a lot of Mountain West basketball, this is the game to watch. Check it out. Like, no disrespect to San Diego State. They're fun to watch as well. No disrespect to any of the other teams in the conference as well. Colorado State's been fun. Boise State's been fun. But these 2 teams are fantastic. New Mexico is the most fun team in the conference to watch in my mind. And it's not particularly that close. They're fantastic, especially when Den is at full strength, and especially when they're at home at the Pit. So this is going to be a really, really good game. I do think the winner ends up in the top 25. And if it's New Mexico, has a really good chance of being the winner in the regular season.
Andy, as we record here, Joe Lenardi has them both as 9 seeds and both listed as the automatic qualifier for the Mountain West. So I don't know if that's a typo or if, he just can't decide, but there we go. Andy, speaking of bracketology, with only a month left till Selection Sunday, things are getting very bubbly. Thank you very much. And somehow the lame duck Indiana Hoosiers are back in the conversation along with John Calipari's Arkansas Razorbacks. Where is that coming from? We'll get you ready for this weekend's bubble slate coming up in just a second. right after I tell you about FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you missed the opening tip-off because you were finishing off getting those nachos ready, or maybe you just had to go, use the facilities, whatever it is, maybe you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, or you are watching an NBA game where it frankly doesn't matter till the fourth quarter anyway, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. It's great because with FanDuel, when you win, you get paid instantly. Andy, going back to the Iron Bowl, right now, FanDuel has it Alabama at home by 1.5 points. So right now, new FanDuel customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, guys, let's get bubbly. As we look at things, we got two games that are kind of double bubbly this weekend, meaning both teams are on the bubble. Andy, we've got Indiana tonight as well. We've got Arkansas this weekend. And folks, Andy and I were laughing before we hit record because typically we just go with Joe Lunardi's bracketology because he's the most, I think, the most popular, and so it's the one most people are locked in on. We were laughing before the show because he accidentally had Arkansas both in his last four in and first four out in his Friday morning refresh. Andy, since we've started recording, he's fixed that. Arkansas is now only in last four in, and Wake Forest is back in the first four out. So actually, I think that now means we have three double bubble games this weekend, Mr. Patton. So before we get to those double bubble games, I do want to start with these long-standing, really, the Hoosiers and the Arkansas Razorbacks. These are two teams that, frankly, I had left for dead. I think you probably had as well. And if you didn't, correct me here in a second. But I want to start with the Hoosiers because it is the night tonight. They are playing tonight, hosting UCLA, 8 p.m. on Fox. FanDuel has it Bruins on the road, -1.5. Andy, this is so intriguing to me, and here's why, and then I want to get your take. Mike Woodson, it was a week ago right now that this news came out that he was going to step away after this season. Since then, they pushed Michigan to the brink at home, ended up by 3. I think it was 70-67, if I remember that score correctly. And then won at Michigan State. We talked about that earlier in the week. And so, Andy, now it almost feels like they've got some post Mike Woodson life all of a sudden. Do you think that's enough to catch UCLA, who had just been on a 7-game winning streak before losing at Illinois on Tuesday?
I absolutely do. Yeah. And I don't think Indiana's a better team than UCLA. But I think that they, being at home, I think that they seem to have this renewed energy. This isn't like the first time we've seen this. It is actually fairly common when a program, is going to make a coaching change and a coach, makes that announcement and sometimes you see that team kind of rally around the coach. And for everything about Coach Woodson, we've criticized him. We've criticized the roster construction, the style, we criticized him not having a press conference, we mostly criticize Indiana's administration, but there's no indication that Woodson is not very beloved by his players. That has always been something that is kind of strongly known about him. And so the players on this roster stepping up for him and kind of delivering doesn't really surprise me. Meanwhile, UCLA has had their issues on the road. Mick Cronin has been loud about that, particularly early in the season. They obviously settled in and have had a very successful stretch outside of their most recent game. But going to Bloomington, where there's going to be some energy now, there's going to be some energy from the fans. It's not going to be as kind of listless as it has been when the fans were sort of out of it. They're back on the bubble. The fans know that. They have this renewed energy. I think it's going to be loud. I think it's going to be enthusiastic. And I think there's a real chance that UCLA kind of stumbles a little bit. So I'm really interested in how this game goes. I'm interested to see the front court battle. Umar Ballo seems like he's going to have a big advantage. UCLA's got a talented front court, but they don't have a ton of size outside of Ade Mara. He has played better as of late, but he might need to play big minutes. And we haven't really seen him be able to do that very much this season. And if he's not in the game much, Eric Daly and Tyler Bilodeau, those guys are like 6'9". just think Balo is going to be able to go to work against them. So I from a basketball perspective, I think Indiana has some advantages here. And just from a narrative perspective, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out and get a dub here.
Andy, from Lunardi's bracketology, Indiana does still have a good bit of work to do. They're in the next 4 out right now. The other team we mentioned was Arkansas. They're on the road in College Station at number 8 Texas A&M. That's noon Saturday, ESPN. Ken Palm has it A&M -8. Andy, Arkansas similarly has been on a little bit of a roll here lately. It feels like, if I feel like it really kind of started with that win over Kentucky in Rupp. We've talked about the, kind of figuring things out, similar to when Malik Reneau went down for a little bit for Indiana. Obviously he's back now and playing. But since Arkansas had a similar thing with Boogie Fland, they've been playing better, including that Kentucky game. They've won 3 of their last 4, winning at Kentucky, at Texas, losing to Alabama at home, understandable, but just by 4, and then they just beat LSU at home. Do you have a thought that Arkansas could go on the road and win in College Station?
Yeah, I also do. Yes. I think I have been skeptical of A&M. I was skeptical of A&M last year. I am skeptical still of A&M this year. I don't want to verge all the way into hater territory because I actually really like Buzz Williams and I like how this team plays, but they missed a whole lot of shots. And Arkansas is not a great defensive team, but Big Z has been playing way better as of late. We've talked about Nelly Davis playing much better as of late. We've had the conversation that feels weird to talk about, but are they better without Boogie Fland because they can just share the ball with more ball dominant players? And it kind of feels like, yes, that has been the case with this team winning 3 out of 4. They really, really needed to pick up that Oklahoma game. They lost that by 3. I think that's hurting them from a resume perspective right now. But I don't think I'm not saying I'm predicting them to win, but can they win? Absolutely. A&M is streaky. They're inconsistent. If Wade Taylor's having an off night, if Zurich Phelps is having an off night, this Arkansas team can absolutely beat them. I think that, it's going to take some of the stars aligning a little bit, but I wouldn't have predicted Arkansas, or I certainly didn't predict Arkansas to beat Kentucky. I don't think I predicted them to beat Texas, and they won both those games. This is a huge game. I mean, certainly Indiana beating UCLA at home is a big game for Indiana, but it doesn't move the needle as much. You go on the road, you beat a top 10 team for Arkansas. This jumps them a considerable amount into that bubble conversation. Whether they should be that far in, I mean, their record's still not good, but they don't have a ton of terrible losses. Obviously, Oklahoma's a bad loss for them. LSU, but that was a road game, so that's not terrible either. I'm not sure I would fully move them all the way in if they win this game, but a lot of people will. And this is the best. I mean, then they got Auburn after that. Obviously, that's going to be really tough. But you win that game, you're good at that point.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm very excited to see what Calipari can do with his back against the wall against a fairly streaky A&M team.
All right, so folks, right now Lunardi has Arkansas as a last 4 in. Obviously, if you are a bubble team, you're a big UCLA fan tonight and a big A&M fan tomorrow. Andy, we got 3 double bubble games this weekend. We're looking at Wake, fresh off that epic collapse the other night against Florida State, is at SMU. Wake right now is sitting first 4 out, as is SMU. So it's less playing in and somebody playing out. That game is 6 p.m. on Saturday, ACC Network. And then the other one that's really interesting to me, Andy, I almost said Kent State. That would be hilarious. Kansas State, who right now is next 4 out, is playing at BYU, who is last 4 in. Kansas State, all of a sudden, Andy, has won 6 straight games. Included in that stretch is beating West Virginia, winning at Iowa State, winning at Arizona State, beating Kansas at home, beating Arizona at home. Those are, it's not just 6 crap teams. Those are phenomenal wins. Can K-State keep this rolling at BYU? And then I'll let you answer that. But the third double bubble game, Boise State right now, who is next 4 out, is at San Diego State, who is last 4 in. That's Saturday, 10 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Andy, back to the Big 12. K-State at BYU. What you got?
I'm taking BYU. I think they're really hard to beat at the Marriott Center. And Kansas State's been playing great. They've been playing some absolutely phenomenal ball. It seems like Jerome Tang kind of finally figured out the mixture, figured out how to get this team to work. I think they're a more talented team, just in terms of the overall talent of the players on the roster. Especially they have some older guys, whereas BYU skews a little bit younger with some of their better players like Igor Demeen and Kenan Catchings. But I think BYU is still going to win this one at home. They're a good 3-point shooting team. I think that's going to be tough for Kansas State. So give me BYU in this one, but I'm not going to be surprised by any stretch if Kansas State wins this one. They've surprised me a few times already this year, surprised me against Iowa State, surprised me against Kansas. They're not going to surprise me if they beat BYU, but it's very hard to win at the Marriott Center, and I think BYU is going to take it.
Andy, very quickly, from Thursday night, we had a couple bubble games. 25th ranked Maryland went to Nebraska, won there on the road, 83-75. Nebraska's the bubble team, so that's a good thing for other bubble teams. UC San Diego, who's in this bubble mix, crazy to have a Big West team in the bubble mix, but they won at Cal State Bakersfield on Thursday night, 73-54. Memphis wins at South Florida, as they should. And then in the important West Coast Conference second place matchup, San Francisco goes to Gonzaga. Zags take care of work by 11, essentially takes San Fran out of the race for the regular season championship, and Gonzaga just keeps touch with St. Mary's atop the rankings. Obviously, Andy, we got a bunch of other games Saturday and Sunday. Anything else you just want to mention before you get us out?
Yeah, there's so many phenomenal basketball games. I'll say too, looking at some of the bubble games, the other bubble games that we got in terms of the last four teams that are in right now, West Virginia at Baylor, I think that's an important game for West Virginia, but I think Baylor wins that one. I think that puts West Virginia a little bit closer to being on the other side of the bubble. Oklahoma versus LSU, that'll be an interesting one. Again, Oklahoma, the bubble team, but they're going on the road. We mentioned Vandy at Tennessee, or I don't know if we mentioned Vandy at Tennessee. Vandy, you win that one, you're much, much safer inside the field of 68.
And they could win that game.
They absolutely could. They've been playing some really fun basketball, but road, it's tough. And then this is the game that stood out to me when I made my comment earlier of like, we are not even getting to talk about some of these great games on Saturday. Kentucky at Texas, we're going to mention it here. That's a game normally you'd get to talk about, but there's so many great stuff going on this weekend. We're not getting it to 33 minutes into the show here. For this one, Texas is the bubble team. You win at home, you hold home court, you beat a Kentucky team that is now kind of projected to be a 3 seed. That's a huge win for Rodney Terry and the Longhorns. If they can pull it off, I think it depends on the health for some of Kentucky's guards. That's been a big storyline for them. But that's going to be a late night game Saturday, 8 p.m. on ESPN. That's a great bubble game to watch, and just going to be some really fun college basketball.
Yeah, Andy, let's remember Lamont Butler had to go back out. He got jammed his shoulder the other night, was back out, and Jackson Robinson's been missing as well. So could be a struggle in Austin for the Wildcats.
Well, the great news, folks, is that our good buddy Leaf Tulane, he's going to host our Saturday game night show as he's been doing since the start of the year 2025. So if you want to get some instant reaction to all of the games going on Saturday, all these epic matchups, the Iron Bowl, all the other fun ones going on in the Big 12, check it out. Again, it's going to be wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening right now. Check it out, Leaf, live college basketball game night. But that is going to wrap it up for us today. Isaac and I will be back on Monday, getting you some big picture recaps of the weekend and getting you ready for the rest of the games going on next week. As always, though, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes as they head out to Texas. Cheers to the McBruins. And until next time, peace out.